So hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar on hydrology and lithium extraction at the Salar de Atacama. First of all, please note that this is an open webinar, so I kindly ask you to please turn off your microphones. On behalf of the AHK Chile, I will moderate our dialogue today, where we will focus on relevant questions regarding this important topic for both Germany and Chile. And for this reason, we are very pleased to have with us today key players from both countries who will give latest insights into the lithium market. And we will also have a deeper look at the hydrogeological system at the Salar de Atacama and at the issue of sustainability in the context of lithium extraction. My name is Denise Kirschner. I am project manager in energy mining and sustainability at AHK Chile. And with me today is my colleague Iris Wunderlich, project leader in mining and sustainability, who will moderate our discussion round in the second part of the event, where we will take up your questions as well. Iris, would you like to say hello?
Hi, thank you very much, Denise, for that nice introduction, and hello from my side. So I'm Iris, I'm Denise's colleague, and today I will be in charge of the Q&A session after the presentations. And just a short notice on my behalf, I guess you have already noticed, and Denise just mentioned it, this is an open webinar where interaction between the participants of the webinar is possible and everybody can see each other, which I think it's quite nice actually. So we are stepping out a bit of this virtual world we are in right now. But this also means that we might easily interrupt our speakers when not being careful about our microphones. So please, for the audience, switch off cameras and microphones during the presentations. And as I said, and Denise also mentioned, after the presentations, we will have the moderated question and answer sessions. And you're more than welcome to use the chat function for your questions and comments. And please make sure when you do so, write your name correctly and also add the company or institution names so we can actually see who is asking and who states the question. So that's from my side for the moment, and enjoy the presentations, and back to Denise.
Thanks, Iris. And well, lastly, I would like to stress that this event today is also the starting point of our lithium working group, a platform for a binational dialogue on lithium between key industry players from Germany and Chile, with the objective to promote a responsible lithium extraction. The AHK Chile will organize and coordinate this initiative, which is supported by the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy from Germany, represented here today by Mrs. Andrea Jünemann, Head of Division for International Raw Materials Policy, and Annika Glatz, our esteemed former colleague, who has been in charge of the mining projects at the chamber until 2021 and is now part of the division team at the ministry. And with this, Mrs. Jünemann and Annika, I would like to hand over to you for a few welcome words.
Yes, thank you for that nice introduction. Dear Mr. Terrazas, dear Cornelia Sonnenberg, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation to this important event. Before I will hand over to my colleague Annika Glatz, who will address you on behalf of the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, allow me just a few comments from my side. Germany very much appreciates the long-lasting, fruitful cooperation between our countries, not only in the field of raw materials. This trustful cooperation provides a good basis also for tackling challenges together. Germany and the EU have set ambitious targets to drastically reduce the carbon footprint. And it is and was time for action. Therefore, there are enough clear signs all over the world, whether it is the early bushfires in the United States or the devastating flooding just recently in Germany. Meanwhile, there is a growing common understanding for the need of transforming and decarbonizing our industry, and Germany as an industry nation clearly and certainly has to lead by example in this context. However, this cannot be done overnight, and we will need like-minded countries like Chile on our side. And we will need very special so-called high-tech minerals. Lithium is just one out of 30 minerals the EU considers as critical. And due to a recent study of our National Raw Materials Agency, DERA, the demand for several minerals like lithium, rare earths, nickel, cobalt, or graphite, just to name a few, will rise remarkably in the next 2 decades. Chile is blessed with raw materials and therefore in the focus of many different stakeholders. And Chile is no stranger to extreme weather phenomena, and a series of recent painful events show us that sustainability and the development of climate-neutral technologies are ambitions we have to focus on worldwide. I'm convinced that today's joint exchange will be an important contribution towards our common goals. Therefore, I would like to explicitly thank our Chilean partners for participating in today's event and for sharing so generously the newest developments of the Chilean lithium industry concerning the important topic of hydrology. On that note, I would like to hand over to Annika for further details, and I would like to thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to the German audience and buenos dias to Chile. It's a great honor for me to address you today with the welcome words on behalf of the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. As Denise has mentioned, I'm a former colleague of the AHK Chile, as I was in charge of the Competence Center for Mining and Mineral Resources from 2012 until 2020. And it is therefore very gratifying for me to observe, now from a new role, that the German-Chilean cooperation on mining and mineral resources continues to bring forward new fields of joint action. In order to combat climate change, Germany and also the EU have set themselves ambitious goals in terms of climate neutrality. They can only be reached using green technologies like e-mobility or renewable energies. And the basis of these future technologies are raw materials like lithium that Germany needs to import from countries blessed with huge reserves like Chile. Later on, we will hear from Michael Schmidt, economic geologist and senior lithium analyst at the German Raw Materials Agency, DERA, more about the exact demand projections from Germany. But as those of you who participated in last year's German-Chilean Forum for Mining and Raw Materials surely remember, we already have clearly identified that lithium will have a central role in our bilateral dialogue in the next decades. We also saw that it is no longer just an issue of the right quantitative supply of lithium, but also of securing the sustainability along the supply chain. A new way of creating value is needed that harmonizes with our overall climate goals. In Germany, we have been taking steps into this direction already. In June of this year, for example, Germany adopted a legally binding act on corporate due diligence in supply chains for companies of a certain size. But even before this legislative initiatives, many German companies already proactively introduced technologies and projects that aimed at enhancing sustainability along the supply chain. Considering the expected strong increase in lithium demand from Germany, a constant dialogue regarding this specific raw material is crucial. We know and we acknowledge the fact that Chile is a country that shares our values about sustainability. And we are eager to learn more about the latest innovations in this field, especially concerning lithium. The fact that today's event will kick off a German-Chilean lithium working group, as Denise has also mentioned, is therefore a very important step. This will give us a platform to be in a constant dialogue and identify cooperation opportunities in this field of action from a very early stage onwards. We would also like to thank the German-Chilean Chamber of Commerce and Industry, AHK Chile, for the efforts undertaken to successfully implement this new element of the bilateral cooperation on mining between Chile and Germany. And in this sense, I wish you all an interesting webinar and many new ideas for the agenda for our newly created working group. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much, Annika. Thank you, Mrs. Junemann. And I'm pleased to give the virtual floor now to our Chamber's General Manager, Cornelia Sonnenberg, who would also like to welcome you and open the event.
Guten Tag, bienvenidos a todos, welcome. Dear Ms. Junemann, Annika, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the German-Chilean Chamber of Industry and Commerce, AHK Chile, I would like to welcome you to this exciting event. Chile and Germany have always enjoyed a close cooperation on a political, economic, and also cultural level. In the field of mining and raw materials, they can look back on a common tradition and a close working relationship. This was formalized in 2013 with a declaration on raw material cooperation between the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy and the Chilean Ministry of Mines. Through this cooperation, the German-Chilean Forum on Mining and Raw Materials was established. In 2012, AHK, with the support of the Federal Ministry, created the Competence Center for Mining and Raw Materials. With this long-term support, we have had the opportunity to help German companies with market information and allow them to gain access to a network of contacts in Chile when they enter market. For Chilean companies, we have provided assistance in the search for cooperation with German technology providers. But it has also given us the opportunity to work together, specifically on topics that are relevant on both sides of the Atlantic, like raw materials and future developments in the global market. Because of the increasing need for decarbonization and the digitalization of society, we have been dealing with the major topic of sustainability in mining for several years. Within this, due to a global energy transition that now requires storage solutions and the growth of electromobility, the topic of raw materials for these future technologies has grown. Chile supplies not only copper, which is used primarily for digitalization and in renewable technologies, but also lithium. This is an elementary component for storage solutions in energy systems and electric vehicles, the latter being highly important for German industry and is therefore in the spotlight of our attention. It therefore makes sense for us, the AHK, an institution that brings German and Chilean companies together, to set up this working group on an important topic, working with the support of the BMWI and within the existing framework and success of the Competence Center for Mining and Raw Materials. The new German-Chilean Lithium Working Group will be an opportunity for companies from both countries to exchange information. It will also serve as a think tank and will help to find solutions for issues such as the need for environmentally compatible and responsible lithium mining on the supply side and the use of the raw material on the demand side. The working group will meet twice a year with the invited companies and institutions discussing relevant issues. It will also give stakeholder groups the opportunity to talk about specific topics. As AHK Chile, we will accompany the organization and the overall management of the working group. We are kicking off the German-Chilean Lithium Working Group with today's open webinar on the highly relevant topic of hydrology. And I'm very pleased that in addition to the two largest lithium companies operating in Chile, we can also welcome the Chilean Economic Development Agency, CORFO, and its Vice President, Pablo Terrazas, a key stakeholder with the lithium mining industry. This webinar is the first international event to present the hydrological integrated model of the Salar de Atacama developed by CORFO. We consider it extremely important to share technical information from independent fact-finding and an in-depth analysis of the local environment, as well as technical and scientific results that reflect not only on the impact for individual companies, but for an entire region. The common understanding of these different realities makes the basis for collaborative decision-making that will ultimately benefit both countries and their societies. Again, I want to extend a very warm welcome to you all and thank you very much for your attention. Back to Denise.
Thank you so much, Connie. And now we are going to start with our first block, where we will get an overview of the lithium market. And first, I would like to welcome Michael Schmidt, economic geologist and senior analyst at DERA, the German Mineral Resources Agency. So this presentation will take the perspective of the demand side. And Michael, you can share your screen now, switch on your camera and your microphone, and the virtual floor is yours.
Okay, I'm on it. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Just 1 second, my computer is a bit slow. There we go. During the presentation, I'd like to shut off my camera. That makes it a bit easier for me. First of all, thank you very much for the very, very kind introduction and invitation. It makes me very happy to contribute to this very, very important meeting or webinar. And as Denise just pointed out, I'd like to give you a little overview of the current lithium market on the demand side, and maybe even put a little twist on the European side of things. As we've already heard, DERA is the German Mineral Resources Agency at the BGR, which is the Federal Institute for Geosciences and Natural Resources. And we are subordinate to the BMWE, the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy. When we talk about lithium, we did have a hype phase in 2016, and the question that always arises is that hype over? No, by far, by no means. It just started again, and it'll be bigger than ever before. Why is that? I will explain in a minute. On the left side, you'll see the plot of our DERA critical minerals or raw materials list that was just published a couple of days back. And what you see is how concentrated a market is versus its country risk. So as a very prominent example for a battery raw material, if you will, is cobalt. Almost 90% are supplied out of the DRC with a fairly bad country risk and a very highly concentrated market. When it comes to lithium, lithium is also a very, very concentrated market. There's only 2 countries that supply more than 70%. And there's only 4 companies that supply more than 50, almost more than 55%, being Albemarle and SQM in Chile. And those 2 have close to 40% of market share. And we already heard that green technology will be one of the key issues in the next decade or 2. And if you look into this diagram, the upper right corner is that corner where most of the potentially critical raw materials are, being cobalt, the platinum group minerals, rare earth elements, graphite, antimony, palladium. So all of those materials that we will need for this transition are either fairly concentrated or have, or the sourcing is allocated to countries that are have fairly bad country risk based on the world governance indicators. When we look into the lithium primary supply, there's 2 things that are really striking. For one being the market share that I already said. We have close to 50% Australian market share over the last couple of years, with a very, very high annual growth rate due to what the Chinese industry invested in Australia. But from 2015 towards 2020, we've had a primary supply output increase of more than 150%, which is very, very remarkable if you are into the minerals or into the raw material space. Now, from 2020 towards 2030, which is only, well, we only have 8 to 9 years left, we will have to increase primary supply by 6, 8, or even 10 times. And all of that has to be of battery grade so that we can put it into the mobility transition that we want. So we will be needing more than 316,000 tons of lithium content by 2030. And in terms of LCEs, that's close to 1.7 million tons of LCE. And last year, we've had about 400,000 tons of LCE. So we will need quite a dramatic increase in output, which will require a multi-billion-dollar investment of the industry. You probably know this already. There's two prime sources for lithium that can give you pretty much the same product. Those are either hard rock deposits, I've already named Australia, spodumene, pegmatites, or even brine deposits, South America, Chile, Argentina. And the two main products that are being produced or traded, or are the first intermediate products, are either lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide. And depending on the battery technology that you are looking into in the next couple of years, we will see a shift towards lithium hydroxide. But it's worth noting that both sources can produce the same product, but at a different environmental footprint. And I'll talk about that later on in my presentation. Right now, hard rock deposits account for roughly 60% of supply and brine for 40%, and we used to have it 50-50 a couple of years back. Lithium from brine deposits, there's only a couple of things that I'd like to mention. First of all, each brine is unique in South America, all over the world. The main resources and reserves are located in South America, Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. And they all differ in their lithium content. And of course, they also differ in their impurity levels and contents. And thus, each brine has to be treated individually in the processing plants. When we talk about lithium-bearing minerals, hard rock deposits, pegmatite deposits, there's more than 200 lithium-containing minerals. Of that, there's only 25 that contain more than 2% of lithium oxide. And of the 25, it is basically spodumene, petalite, and lepidolite that are most important to the industry. Spodumene is the main product, or spodumene concentrates are the main products out of Australia that are being shipped to China for further refinement. On the demand side, there's two very interesting things. When you look into, on the left side, the demand of 2015, you could see that rechargeable batteries and the glass and ceramics industry as a whole, they accounted for 86% of total demand in the lithium space. 5 years later, in 2020, rechargeable batteries already went up to 71% of total demand, putting some pressure on the remaining applications. But towards 2030, there's many consultants out there that think that rechargeable batteries, and especially the ones for automotive applications, will reach up to 90% of global demand in lithium, which is very remarkable. And as I said before, we are approaching almost 2 million tons of LCE in demand for that particular industry. So there is a shift in application, if you will, and there is that one application being batteries that have a profound effect on the total demand of this raw material. And what's really good for the lithium-ion battery guys is that you can't replace lithium. You need lithium because of its physical chemical properties for the current lithium-ion battery technologies that we've bound ourselves to for the next 10 to 15 years. When you talk into price developments, that's quite interesting. As I said before, we've had this first boom phase in 2016 towards 2018. And back at the time, lithium concentrates out of Australia, they almost reached $1,000 per ton. The Australians were almost so desperate that they even exported raw, what we've called DSO material, which is basically just raw ore without any concentration. But then as demand and due to many different reasons, prices trickled down towards 2019 and reached their low towards the end of 2020 with almost below $400 per ton, but are now back on top. Over the past 6 to 7 months are back to $750 per ton. So you can clearly see a demand pickup, especially in China. This is all China driven right here. When you look into the most, or the two most sold products being lithium carbonate, this is the global average right here, and lithium hydroxide, ex-works China, you can also see this first price hype towards the end of Q1 of 2018, and then prices dropped down into 2020. And over the last 6 to 7 months, prices are back up 70 to 88% spot price, not contract. But there's a clear evidence that there is a demand pickup. And this is also driven by the numerous announcements of the automobile industry, cell makers, and cathode producers. I'll talk about that in a second. But there's a clear price trend upwards, which I believe, or that we believe, is demand driven. When we talk about lithium ion industry, battery electric vehicles, we need to talk about Europe. And Europe is becoming the hotspot of e-mobility. And to be quite frank with you, if someone would have told me this about 3 to 4 years ago, I would have simply not believed it. But it appears that Europe has done some shifting in that sense. And the developments have been extremely dynamic over the past 3 years. You can recalculate your demand figures every other day, if you will, and you can go from 600 all the way up to 1,000 gigawatt hours of capacity, which is huge. And over the past couple of weeks, you've had Volkswagen with the announcement of their 6 gigafactories. You've had ACC Stellantis, which is Fiat Chrysler. You've had Volvo with the new cooperation with Northvolt. Just a couple days back, Mercedes-Benz claimed that they will go fully electric where markets allow it towards 2030. They alone will build 8 gigafactories globally with a total of 200 gigawatt hours. So there is a tremendous change in the automobile industry going on in Europe. And just today, this morning, news came out that there's going to be another gigafactory in the Czech Republic, possibly even connected to Volkswagen. Nobody knows yet, but there's going to be one in the Czech Republic. So numbers change constantly, and that makes it really hard to put a finger down on what do we actually need in 2025 or 2030. So what we did a couple of weeks back was what we always call a chart of the month, and you can download it for free on our website, where we tried to put 2 demand scenarios on EVs, or demand for EVs in terms of lithium for Germany and as Europe as a whole. And back then we've had 2 scenarios, one with 260 gigawatt hours and one with 650. And I already told you, or just told you in the last slide, that we might even see 1,000 in Europe. Anyway, if you take those 2 scenarios into account, we would need in Germany between 50 and 170,000 tons of LCE, lithium. As Europe as a whole, almost 170 to 270 kilotons. Now, to put this into perspective, this 650 gigawatt hour scenario for Europe in total would need more lithium than was globally demanded in 2018. And the global demand will be in excess of 1.7 million tons of LCE. So in order to put all of those plans of the cathode producers, cell manufacturers, and even of the OEMs into reality, the supply side, on the primary side, on the cathode side, on the cell side, they really have to pump a lot of money into this market to really get this, to basically get the job done. Now, when you look into Europe, and we do have lithium potential in Europe, so could Europe be self-sustaining in its supply or in its demand for lithium? Well, as I said, we have a very, very strong import dependency for lithium chemicals, being hydroxide or lithium carbonate right now, because there is no substantial production as of now. The European demand could be in 2030 about 560K tons of LCE, roughly 105,000 tons of lithium content for EVs only, battery grade, for 1,000 gigawatt hours. And there are currently 16 projects under active or semi-active development at different stages in Europe as listed on S&P Global. And in theory only, that would put 130 kilotons of LCE on the market if it was 100% of announced final capacities at the same time into the market. And everybody that is involved in mining knows how likely or unlikely this is. But anyway, 100% of that potential capacity could only supply 20 to 25% of the European demand. And of course, there is additional European projects in Serbia, Bosnia. There's even some potential in the Ukraine untapped. So yes, there is potential on the primary side, but not enough to be self-sustaining. We hold about 6% of global resources in Europe based on what the USGS publishes. And so our import dependence will remain, but we could lower it a bit. So then what about secondary supply? Well, is it probable, possible? Is it even mandatory? Some of the key assumptions, the EU has put out a lot of targets towards 2030, 2035. And some of those targets for 2030 are that we will have to collect 70% of the lithium-ion batteries that we put out on the road in cars. Of that 70%, we need to recycle 70% of lithium. That's the recovery target rate. And then in 2030, the EU will mandate that about 4% of the lithium put into batteries in Europe will have to come from secondary sources. In 2035, they'll go up to 10% of secondary lithium in batteries. It doesn't necessarily have to come from recycled batteries, but it has to be secondary lithium from recycled sources. I did some calculations for my upcoming update of my lithium publication, and I've calculated with a supply and demand matrix that we could achieve in 2030 between 3 and 12% at a maximum of secondary supply. So yes, secondary supply can provide some of the demand in Europe, but not all of it. Just a few last words to sustainability, which is the prominent issue in what I have done in the past months. And this is a fairly new publication which deals with life cycle analysis of lithium products all the way down to cathode and even final cell chemistries. And I'm not going to judge this in any way, but what is very evident from this very interesting paper is that apparently, depending on the source being brine or ore deposits, lithium carbonate and or lithium hydroxide will have per ton a different backpack, if you will, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, energy consumptions while producing, freshwater consumption during production, and of course, CO2 footprint. So even before that material will go into a cell for your EV, and it's the same product, but from different sources will have a different impact on the environment. And we need to put a focus on the lowest, on the possibly lowest environmental footprint if you want EVs to be as green as possibly. And this accounts also for the cell chemistries. So with that being said, I'm 2 minutes over time. I'd like to finish my presentation. And if there are any questions, please go ahead and I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for this interesting and informative presentation. We will see you again later in our discussion round. And I invite our audience again to write down the questions directly in the chat. We will collect them and try to answer them later. But now we would also like to take a look at the supplier side at Chile and their perspective on the lithium market. And for this, we have invited Jorge Cantayobs, Director of Research and Policy Planning at the Chilean Copper Commission, which is part of the Chilean Ministry of Mining. And thank you, Jorge, for joining us, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Denise. Thank you for the invitation. And well, very short, I will. Sure, it's okay?
Yes.
or is the correct vision? Okay. Well, I'll do the same that Michael to get off the cam because it's better for the link. Well, COCHILCO is a public agency that advises the Minister of Mines and other public bodies in terms of in issues relative with the sustainability of the mining activity. Not only copper, Chilean Copper Commission, but we are not only copper. We advise also and we provide information about the other minerals like lithium, iron ore, gold, silver, molybdenum, and on others minerals. I will do a presentation, a market presentation, but with a focus in the supply side, obviously. But I will do a very short vision about what's happening with the demand in our opinion. Lithium is usually in 3 of the 4 main primary components of the lithium-ion batteries: anodes, electrolyte, and especially in cathodes. And we see that the battery technological improvement, particularly in cathodes, tend to account for a greater intensity in the use of hydroxide. So this is a very important issue that has implication in the supply side. We expect we see that the expected growth in the lithium demand will be strongly dependent on electromobility, as Michael showed, and we expect that by 2030 the electric vehicles market will represent around 80% of the total lithium consumption, up from around 30% currently. By chemical compound, this is similar with the presentation that I did previously, but we see that even though the carbonate is currently more consumed, we expect that in the future hydroxide becomes the main demand source. This is mainly explained by the rising trend in NCM type batteries, a variety in which we expected hydroxide to have a rising consumption. Now I'll focus in the supply side. In general, we can distinguish 3 potentially exploitable sources: rock minerals or pegmatites, typically in the form of spodumene, brines, and sedimentary rocks. Brines reservoirs are the most abundant. However, pegmatites deposits are more widely distributed worldwide. Pegmatites shares 26% of the current sources or reserves, and the main deposits are located in Australia, USA, RDC, and Canada. In the case of brines, shares 66% of the total reserves, and they are located in different places, but the most important reserves are located in the lithium triangle: Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. And in the case of sedimentary rocks, the estimation is that share 8%. The most important deposits are located in USA, Mexico, Serbia, and recently a new discovery in Peru. In the case of Chile, we have some geological potential in sedimentary rocks, but we don't have enough information because we need to increase the exploration and the research in our deposit in sedimentary rocks. This maps only show the concentration. It's important to show that in the case of Chile, we are estimated that 45% based on USDS, 51% of the reserves in brines in the case of Chile. But this is a very important focus. It's because we are working on that. In terms of production from pegmatites is the main supply source currently, accounting for 55% of the total. This is mainly fueled by a significant lower production time. And because from spodumene, it's possible to directly produce hydroxide. However, producing lithium from brines tends to be a less cost process. We can see that in this chart that our estimation, or the estimation for in times production in the case of pegmatites is around 1 or 2 months. While in brines, the time is between 18 and 24 months. But we also can see that there are some advantage in cost in the production from brines. But the costs vary significantly depending on the operation types, which directly depends on the nature of each deposit. In the left side of this slide, we can see a chart that shows the very wide difference between the production in carbonates, between the production coming from brine and coming from mineral deposits, and this difference is short, is smaller in the production from hydroxide, where the advantage of brines probably is not so high. In the right side, sorry, because I put them, I forgot to change the language, but in this column is the average in the cost structure for the production from brines in different in Chile and other countries. This is a project in Maricunga, and this is the average in the cost structure in operation coming from minerals. Probably the most important issue here is the huge difference in the energy cost, because the use of evaporation in the case of the brines production. The cost of the main operation, this is a focus in the brines production, and the cost of the main operation in Argentina, Chile, and USA are relatively similar, but Chinese operations have a significant superior cost, in large part due to a higher energy expenditure, which is partially explained by the less favorable evaporation conditions and a higher level of impurities in the salt floods. Now, our forecast for the supply in the mine production is expected to grow from around 400. Well, the year 2020, we are just working in our new report, because the figures for the year 2020 has a very difference in different sources. Probably because it's a very different year. We expect to grow from 400 kilotons of equivalent lithium and to around 1,500 to the year 2030. We are estimating that Australia and Chile will retain the top 2 position, but with lower shares. Australia is expected to go from 50% currently to 30% in 2030. And in the case of Chile, we are estimated that we will change from 30% currently to around 17 or 20% in 2030. This is mainly because of the higher expected production of USA, Canada, and Zimbabwe, which are expected to raise their output to at least 10 times their current levels. The forecast by compound, both hydroxide and carbonate, will fuel this road. However, hydroxide is expected to gain ground, going from accounting 22% of the total in 2019 to 49% in 2030. You can see that there are a small difference between we are expecting that what's happening with the demand and what's happening with the supply by compound. So we did this chemical balance, where the demand is split by electric vehicles and other uses, because consider with the demand from electric vehicles will change from mainly carbonate to mainly in hydroxide, but the production has different is split by carbonate and hydroxide. And following the operational entry of new project, along with a lower than expected rise in electromobility, we estimated a surplus between 2018 and 2020. While for 2021, under assumption that the economy will recover, will be recovered this year, we expect a slight deficit, but between 2023 and 2026, we expect a growing surplus as new project and expansion worldwide being to be commissioned. And finally, by the end of the present decade, we expect to see a growing deficit, which would incentivize a spike in the prices and development of new projects. But this is very important to see what happened with the price. We are not doing here forecasting price, but we are estimating and changing the market structure, because most of the lithium contract are between buyers and buyers and miners are long-term deals based on assessment by price agencies. But we think that the demand for lithium and other minerals tied to electric vehicles industry growth, so metals change around the world, have been looking to design contract between buyers and sellers. So we think that probably in the future we will be more standardized contract and probably a more important role of market, formal market. What happened with the Chilean supply? Chile has around 60 salt floods, and they are formed by a saline crust, brine and clastic sediment with extension and depth that can vary widely. In general, we have very good information about some salar, specifically Atacama, and probably in others like Maricunga or Pedernales, but we don't have enough information about all the salars. So there is a very important opportunity to develop more exploration in Chile. The Salar de Atacama has a very high comparative advantage in lithium concentration, log magnesium levels, surface size, and high evaporation rates. But Pedernales, La Isla, Maricunga also present favorable exploitation condition in relation to other deposits outside Chile. With that, the most advanced project in Chile are located in Atacama. The expansion are located in Atacama, and the new project are prospect and project still are located in Maricunga. So with that project, we are estimating an increase in the production of Chile. But we think that even in spite of the output increase, Chilean market share probably will be reduced from 30% to around 20% in 2030. But in blue are the project considered in the previous slide, but in green we are including some projects that are in very early stage. So with that, probably the production of Chile will increase and the market share of Chile will increase. Well, thank you very much. I am open to go to more questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jorge, for your presentation. And actually, we all also received some questions for you, which we will answer later in our Q&A session, if it's okay for you. And now we come to our second block, which will focus on the hydrogeological system of the Salar de Atacama and the two largest lithium producers in Chile. SQM and Albemarle will present their approaches regarding the exploitation of minerals in this unique ecosystem. And we are honored to welcome Corfo as well, the Chilean Economic Development Agency, represented by Pablo Terrazas, Executive Vice President at Corfo, and Beatriz Olivares, hydrogeologist at Corfo. And Pablo Terrazas will present now, as Connie mentioned before, for the first time to an international audience, the integrated hydrological model for the basin of the Salar. And with this, I hand over to you, Pablo, so that you can share your screen. There we can see your slides and your presentation, and so you can start your presentation.
I'm sharing my screen. Am I?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
but not
Okay.
in full screen.
Is it okay?
Now we actually see the black background. It's not the presentation mode right now. I think you would have to change to full.
Yes.
Yes. Now,
Oh, now
perfect.
it's fine.
Beatriz.
Thank you.
Great.
Pablo will start with the presentation.
Pablo is connected. I saw him coming into the chat. So Pablo, if you can put on your microphone and your camera just for the presentation.
¿Está hablando Beatriz ahora?
Yes, now we can hear.
Now you're on screen, Pablo.
Right, Beatriz. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Pablo Terrazas, Vice President of Chilean Economic Development Agency, and it is a pleasure for Corfo to be present at this international webinar organized by the Chilean-German Chamber of Commerce and Industries. We appreciate the invitation for the organizers, and we hope that this event will be useful for all those present. As you can see on the screen, our topic today is sustainable exploitation of lithium in the Salar de Atacama, with focus on the hydrological model developed by Corfo. We thought it would be useful to divide our talk into three main sections. First, Chile as the world leader at the lithium reserves. Second, the Corfo's role in the sustainable exploitation of lithium in the salt flat. And finally, the main results of the integrated hydrological model of the Salar de Atacama Basin, which will be presented by our hydrogeologist, Beatriz Olivares. The lithium reserves are located in different types of deposits in the world, through salt flats and hard rock, and they are distributed by country, as you can see in this pie chart. Chile leading with 44%, followed by Australia with 22%, Argentina with 9%, and in fourth place, China with 7% of the reserves. According to the US Geological Survey 2021, Chile is the country with the largest lithium reserves with 9.2 million tons lithium, representing about 44% of the world reserves, with the lowest and most competitive lithium extraction cost worldwide. The Salar de Atacama in the Antofagasta region is the only salt flat in Chile where there is currently exploitation of brines to produce lithium and another element such as potassium. The exploitation is located in the Corfo mining concessions. This figure on the right side shows the location and distribution of the concession operated by SQM and Albemarle companies, in red and green respectively. It is rule of the owner of the mining properties in the Salar de Atacama. One of the Corfo's main objectives is to ensure the sustainable development of economic activity in the salt flat and its surrounding, both from an environment and social point of view. In this regard, some of the initiatives and activities developed by Corfo are: first, activities with 21 local communities regarding to deliver the funds provided by SQM Salar in the context of the contract between Corfo and this mining company for lithium production. Those funds will be used to promote sustainable development in those communities through investment and development projects. The communities will be able to receive this contribution voluntarily, and they will be sovereign to define the projects that they want to develop. Second, another initiative is the Chilean Institute of Clean Technologies, the biggest research and development center located in the north of Chile. This institute will have a strong industrial focus aimed at catalyzing the development, scaling, and adaptation to Atacama desert condition of technology solution in solar energy, sustainable mining, green mining, and advanced material of lithium and other minerals. It is important to note that this institute is the only one of its kind in Latin America and hopes to be a world reference. Third, another area that Corfo is working on is the development of technology studies. One of the main studies is the development of an integrated hydrological model of the Salar Atacama Basin, which contributes to the knowledge of base of groundwater system in the basin and a regional level at which predicts eventual effects in the hydrological system in view of different scenarios from groundwater research and freshwater brine extractions. The model and the tool will be made available to the Chilean General Water Department, regulator and inspector in hydrogeological matters, for the purpose of being used as a relevant input for making decisions for future projects in the Salar of Atacama Basin. This will allow the state to better assess the synergistic effects of current and future mining operation in the basin, lithium and copper, in the face of the various extractive and research scenarios, including climate change. Another study that Corfo is developing in parallel is an integrated water management model of the Salar Atacama Basin as a numerical tool to support decision-making in the management of water resources. The tool integrates surface and groundwater numerical models. One of the activities that is the process of being implemented is the design and implementation of the hydrological and environmental online monitoring system in the SQM operating area, which receives data from the source of freshwater extraction, next brain extraction, and contains historical data of SQM environmental monitoring in the area. The systems aim to evaluate and prevent potential effects in the protection zones due to operations. Additionally, this system allows to continue collecting information for a better understanding of the Salar's behavior of time. This complementary system will be shared with the supervisory agencies to promote and strengthen the controls and monitoring of the environmental compliance of the projects. 5, Corfo is also monitoring compliance with the clauses relative to environmental commitments defined in the contracts signed between Corfo and the mining operators of the Salar de Atacama, SQM, and Albemarle. 6, in addition, our institute has various collaborating agreements with different public agencies such as Chilean's General Water Department, National Geologic and Mining Service, Chilean Nuclear Energy Commission, Superintendency of the Environment, Minister of Mining, and National Customs Service. Next, Beatriz Olivares, our hydrogeologist, will present you the main result of the hydrological model made for Corfo. Thank you.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. An integrated hydrogeological model of the Salar de Atacama Basin was made by Corfo from 2018. This hydrogeological model describes the main characteristic of the groundwater system, including the mixing zone between freshwater and brines, which occurs mainly on the eastern edge of the salar or marginal zone here in this part of the figure. At first, the conceptual hydrological model included a large amount of public hydrological, geological, and hydrogeological information. Here we can see this conceptual model include all the basin, the entire basin of the Salar de Atacama, here in red line in the figure. After that, the numerical models developed are one 3D groundwater flow model in the alluvial aquifer domain, constructed in the MudFlow USGS code. Here in the figure, in the domain, it is in the blue line. And 3 2D groundwater flow and transport model constructed in CWAT 2000 in local areas of mixing zone or marginal zone. Here in white lines in Quelana area, Peine area, and La Punta La Brava area, all over the mixing zone or marginal zone. The model was developed according to the guide for the use of groundwater models in the environmental impact assessment system, and with technical contribution of different public agencies involved in water topics. The models were constructed using a common reference system, which allows to include all data of the basin at the same level and to simulate the combined effect of the extraction. This is very new in the basin, in the water management of the basin. Therefore, the model constitutes an integrated numerical tool for the evaluation and management of water in the basin, which allows to predict the response of the hydrological system to different hypothetical scenarios, both extractive and climatic. The results are expressed in terms of increasing groundwater levels and displacement of the saline wedge. Like all models, the Corfu model has assumption and limitation, size of area of interest, availability of surface and in-depth data, capability of the numerical modeling tools, etc. For this reason, the answers provided by the simulation should be considered as a trend and updated as new field data becomes available. And after that, with properly calibrated and validated models, we define 8 scenarios, which combine different extraction rates and recharge. In this figure, we can see different areas of the numerical model domain and the different places where the extraction are developed. For example, we have here the brine extraction of the SQM location here in yellow. In red, we can see the brine extraction from Albemarle, and in light blue, we can see brine extraction of a project that is not developing now. Is just a project in environmental system. The project is an X1 of Paine, and we can see in yellow dot freshwater extraction from SQM, in purple dot Albemarle freshwater extraction, and here in green we can see extraction from freshwater extraction from Compañía Minera Saldívar. We have here in this table the scenarios and the explanation of each 8 scenarios. And here we have the extraction for each scenario by company and by water type. For example, we have Albemarle brine, Albemarle freshwater, SQM brine, etc. So we have 8 scenarios. One base case reflecting freshwater and brine extraction approved under current environmental permits. This is base case. And we have 6 hypothetical cases, including the base case, plus eventual increase or decrease of extraction period and rate for brines and freshwater. This is the 6 hypothetical cases. And we have 1 hypothetical case, including the base case, plus an eventual decrease in recharge between 15 and 18% due to climate change. This is the number 7. All the scenarios were simulated for a period of 50 years until 2017. The first result, or the remarkable result that we can see, is that all the scenarios show centimetric maximum drawdown less than 1 meter in the marginal zone or mixing zone. Here in this brown area, here is the marginal zone where the protected area are located. The base case, scenario 1, which includes the extraction of freshwater and brines approved under current environmental permit, shows maximum drawdown in the marginal zone of about 0.6 meters. In the north zone here in brown and green, the maximum drawdown is 0.14 meters. And in Monterey zone here in the south, we can see the maximum drawdown is 0.77. All these drawdowns are registered for 2040 at the end of the extraction. Scenario 7, which simulates the effect of climate change by means of decreasing groundwater recharge, it's the one that produced the greatest groundwater drawdown in the northeast side Monterey zone. The maximum drawdown is of 3.1 meters around the year of 2053 in Monterey Sound here in the red area. And these results reflect the sensitivity of the groundwater system to recharge modification or climate change in this case. Nevertheless, the climate change could produce increase of precipitation, and we are with our scenario 7. We try to explain the worst scenario. The minimum drawdowns occurs for the scenarios with a decrease in the rate extraction of brine and fresh water, such as scenario 4, 5, and 6 in the north, east side, and marginal and Monterey zones. The maximum drawdown is about 0.5 meters in 2044 for scenario 4, which follows SQM sustainability plan, the implementation of which started at the end of 2020. This is the minimum drawdowns, okay? All the scenarios show a recovery trend of the groundwater levels at the end of the simulated period in 2070. In terms of water balance, all the scenarios except scenario 7 of climate change reach a positive storage variation once the fresh water and brine extraction are completed. This starts in the 2030s or 2040s and continue until the end of the simulation period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pablo and Beatriz, for your presentation. And yes, I'm sure we will have an interesting discussion about some aspects of your presentation later. And I think you Pablo have to leave us in a few minutes. So thank you again for your participation. And on behalf of Corfo, Beatriz, you will stay with us to answer the questions later.
Okay.
And next, I would like to give the floor to Corrado Torre, Senior Hydrogeology Director at SQM, who will present the hydrological environmental monitoring system of the company. So Corrado, please turn on your camera and microphone, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Denise. Good morning to everyone. Let me try to share my screen now. Give me just a second. Please let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Presentation, okay. So let's start from the beginning. Thank you for the invitation and good morning to everyone again. And I'm gonna talk about the SQM hydrological environmental monitoring system. And that's a very important part of all the studies and the system of control, the control system for the basin. As we saw from the presentation from Corfo, the basis for every study, every conceptual model and numerical modeling is the monitoring system. So we feed those models by looking at the monitoring data, and the most data and the better, because the key is to understand how the system actually works, and then try to figure out how it could work and behave in the future under different scenarios, as Beatriz just explained. So I'm gonna focus on our monitoring system and try to explain to you how it works and why it's so robust and extensive and comprehensive. So our system is made of 225 points spread all over the basin. And so in this picture on the left, you can see the different kind of points the different area in the basin that are covered, and which is the purpose of each one of these part of the network. So in red, you can see all the points that actually are monitoring the freshwater system in the Leviathan here on the right. Then there are lots of points in the marginal zone, these blue points, that actually are dedicated to understand how those special system and very important system is behaving along the years under this natural and also anthropic condition. I mean, different scenarios for rainfall and precipitation, basically, and also different scenarios of exploitation. In this case, real case scenarios, because we are talking about the past history. So we have a very good comprehension and understanding of how these marginal zones is behaving. And then there are other points located in lagoons overflows. We are talking about this part of the area. Lagoons overflows because all the lagoons that are located in the marginal zone has this natural system of outflows. So we are interested in how this outflow system is working actually, because it's part of the natural behavior of the system. And then there are lots of points located inside the nucleus. It is the part that we, as actors of brine extraction, as Albemarle, we perform our activities. So that is a very important part of the monitoring system to understand how the nucleus actually respond to the pump of brine. So what can we say about this network? It's very extensive. It's a robust and extensive environmental monitoring network. Also, very important, data are reported formally every 6 months to the local environmental authorities. And data are also updated constantly, some on daily basis. And most important of all, I would say that the data are collected since more than 14 years. And some monitoring points have up to 25 years of data available. That's because when the network was set up 15 years ago, 14 years ago, there were points that had as a longer history. So the decision was made in order to have the longer histories as possible in the network. So this is a very extensive, robust, and comprehensive network. So important to understand how the system has behaved along these 15 years and more of operation. And also it's the basis for understanding and build the conceptual model. There are the basis of all these numerical tools that helps us to understand what the future will look like under different scenarios of exploitation and climate, also possibly climate scenario. So this picture on the right is just an example of how you can look at this data and make comparison with between different points in the same basin, how the systems actually behave, what are the differences between the nucleus, the marginal zone, the freshwater aquifer, and so on. And this is important part, and as already said, SQM reports every 6 months to the environmental authority the results of this environmental monitoring. And here we have some picture just to show you some real example of how this the network looks like in the field. This on the left is a monitoring piezometer, monitoring well. In the center, you have a weather station and a lysimeter that looks to see how the meteorological condition can vary along the year. And also on the right, these are surface flow measurements. Very important to understand how the lagoons are fed by these natural surface flow. All this information by last year are available on these websites open to the public. That's a very important step towards the transparency and traceability. So that's why we are going that direction. We understand the value of transparency and traceability. So we decided to put all this information that is with a very long history on this website. So every person that enters this website could navigate and look beyond and in the different kind of information that is available on the web page. So you can see different systems and kind of variables, and you can select a different, for example, subsystem, a Soncor system, and then look and make a zoom in and look at the Barro Negro's principal body of this lagoon system, and look at the very detailed information about these stacks that are located inside the lagoon, to look how the levels inside the lagoon are evolving. And every person so could look at every single point of the monitoring network and looks and see how it actually evolves along the times and make his own comparison. So we think that is a very important step, I repeat, towards transparency and traceability. And also you can see that information online on your smartphone. So I would say that basically there are lots of information in this website. It's the same information we've been collecting along these 15 years and more, but now it's available to all the public. And you can find information about brine, industrial water, meteorology, also not only around hydrology, but also around other different ecosystem indicators, like biotic indicators. So it's a very big, extensive, and completely transparent database open to the public. It's a unique system in the national lithium industry for continued collection of data for better understanding of the Salar Atacama behavior over time. And as I said, it's publicly available as a verification tool of extraction obligations also, compliance, and obviously based on established operational rules, and that whose purpose is to ensure sustainability in Salar de Atacama and its surrounding. And also, and there is an important point to mention here, because we understand that there is a perception of a strong intervention in the territory by the use and the build of this environmental network of wells and different stations. So we started to see what was the best way to reduce our intervention in the territory, still keeping tracks and all the information, the usable information and important information about how the system is evolving. So we made every effort possible, and we are doing that all the time, to increase remote transmission, so in order to minimize the intervention in the territory. As you can understand, we have lots of points, as you can see, so people are full-time dedicated to go to the field and collect the data and see if the system are working correctly. So in order to reduce the presence of people in the territory, we basically made a big effort in remote transmission and put some automatic system in all the wells in order to collect the data store the data in this data system collection, data logger, and then transmit all the data by remote system and to collect the same amount of information, the same quality of information, but with less intervention in the territory. And also we can use Landsat images and all the kind of information from satellite images to make a proper follow-up of all the lagoon system along the years. This is a very important part of the environmental network follow-up, because gives us the good perspective beyond even the environmental network data life, because we go back to the 80s as well. So, and also not last but not least, there are these ADFAs that are technical entities for environmental enforcement. Let's say in English, there are dedicated companies authorized by the local environmental authority to perform the monitoring on our behalf. So in order to guarantee the proper collection of data in terms of quantity, quality, and reliance. So that's a very important part to mention also. And then, so basically we are going towards real-time monitoring. So with less intervention in the territory, in the direction to transparency and traceability. So if you put all these things together, you can see that we are opening our information, and actually we gave good part and all the information available on this network and beyond that to Corfu, and to help them to have the proper and enough information to perform the study. I think it's important to mention. And so now we have at the moment 48 measurement sites with telemetry, just one left due to pending permits for access, a point located in the Tuila Lagoon, 18 stationed within the Los Flamenco National Reserve, and also continuous level measurements with stamps every 1 minute. That is sent to environmental authority. We have a stage. And so, I mean, we are continuous going towards transparency, traceability, less intervention in the territory, and also all the information made public to the SQMS in Linea, the website that I already mentioned. And also, we are using solar energy to power all this station. It's important to mention as well. And data are recorded in multiple databases to prevent losses of information due to lack of communication. That's also important to mention. So last, just to recall you the flow of data capture and sending of information. So the automatic wall level measurements are taken into the point, then sent by telemetry to service provider database, stored in this first database where all calculation and validation is made under strict protocols to preserve amount and quality of the information. And then the final database that is able to send information to the environmental authority and also to the web page that I already mentioned, open to the public. And so you can see in the field what looks like this kind of implementation. So it's very small, protected, and very useful, and allows us to reduce our intervention by personnel in the territory in the interest and taking into account the demand from the community to have less people in the field, but also to preserve the monitoring of the same important variables that allows us to understand how the system, how the basin is working. There's a very important to mention. And last, I want to mention that, as Beatrice already mentioned in the presentation, that SQM is towards reducing the destruction of brine and fresh water with his sustainability program, and that will help to reach our goals of to be carbon neutral by 2030 for iodine, lithium, and potassium, and by 2040 for nitrates as well. So that is my presentation. I hope it was useful for you to understand how we keep under control the basin and all our operation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corrado. Thank you for now, because we will also come back to you in a few minutes. But before that, I would like to introduce our last presentation and participant today, Ellen Lenny Pisano, Vice President for Lithium Sustainability and Country Manager for Chile at Albemarle, who will tell us more about the company's approach for sustainable lithium from Chile for the world. So Ellen, thank you so much for being with us, and I kindly ask you to turn on your camera and microphone to share your screen, and I give you the word.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Denise. And really, I want to give a big shout out to the German-Chilean Chamber for organizing this. When it comes to sustainability, what we know is that it's all about dialogue. It's all about explaining how you operate, as well as really understanding where the world is going. And so being able to have this dialogue with the German government, as well as with stakeholders, is really important. So I really appreciate it. In addition to the other two roles you mentioned, Denise, I'm also part of the lithium leadership team. So I'm part of the team that is really planning how we can meet that demand that both representatives talked about from Germany and from Chile regarding where demand is headed. We're acutely aware of it, and acutely aware of our responsibility as a lithium producer to be able to sustainably secure and produce enough lithium supply so that we can get to those ambitious goals that the EU is really driving globally. So here you can see our lithium footprint. We are extremely integrated. Of course, I'll be talking to you today about our resources in Chile. But as you can see, we're producing globally. So Australia, Chile, the United States, and then processing in those countries, as well as in China, Taiwan, and of course, Germany, which I want to talk to you a bit about. So we are very much a German company as well. There was a plant started in 1913 in Langelsheim, which still operates today. It was started as a recycling center. So it was recycling different metals. And they were actually manufacturing what's called bond metal, which is a metal that was used for the axles of the railway cars. And what this company discovered is that by adding lithium, the axles were stronger and more resilient. So this process was actually used, lithium was used in this process through the 1950s, and is really an important part of the history of the rail industry in Germany. It was actually required as part of the process. So here we are today. We are the only lithium facility in Europe. We have more than 500 employees, and we're producing a number of materials, including lithium carbonate for batteries, of course, glass and ceramics, lithium hydroxide, lithium metal, and of course, organolithium, which is used in the pharmaceutical, agrochemicals, and electronics, and also doing some specialty metals. For example, our lithium is used in about 94% of airbags globally to ensure that when you have a wreck that your loved ones are safe, because the lithium is what's going to ensure that the airbag inflates in a very quick way. And I wanted to talk about recycling as well. You know, we already are recycling in our site in Langelsheim. We recycle product from our production process in Germany, and we recycle from our production processes in Taiwan, in Germany. So we're really prepared to work with the EU in terms of meeting its recycling goals, which Michael talked about earlier. Additionally, we've been doing extensive research both in Germany and in the United States, really for the past decade on recycling. And so we're really pleased that the EU is really driving recycling ambitions through the EU Batteries Initiative and through other areas. So we really are a reliable partner in delivering the EU Green Deal. And as I mentioned earlier, the EU Green Deal is for the EU, but it's also for the world. I mean, the EU is really setting the vision of how we can create a greener world. So, you know, we have world-class operations, we've got diverse supply, and we are extremely focused on how we produce our lithium. So let's talk about Albemarle Chile. We were the founder of lithium production in Chile. Some of the members of our team in Silver Peak, Nevada, which is the only lithium producer in the world, in the US today, and has been producing since 1960, traveled to Chile, did some research in the Salar de Atacama Basin, and discovered just what we've seen is that Salar de Atacama has the richest lithium grade in the world in brines. So 40 years ago, we, working with Corfo, began extracting lithium and processing it. We had our 40th anniversary last August. We're really, really proud of our long history in Chile. And but as much as you know, we talked about what the demand is going to be, but what I really want to focus on today is it's important, as important how we produce as well as how much we produce. So I want to give a complimentary presentation to what Corrado gave. He did a real deep dive on the monitoring part. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well in terms of what we're doing. But I want to also talk about how we produce. And so here on the left, you see our lithium extraction rights, and of course these are SQM rights. Excuse me, SQM's rights here. And we want to always talk about water usage as well. You hear a lot about the lack of water in the Salar de Atacama. And it's frequently associated with the lithium industry. But, you know, as I always say, if we want to solve a problem, we have to understand the problem. And if you look here, here's Albemarle. We have less than 23.5 liters per second of water rights. You'll notice from Beatrice's presentation that she listed us at 16.9 because 16.9 liters per second is really what we have in terms of an environmental permit. And then we are really strong stewards of our water usage. Of the 16.9 liters per second, we actually use between 6 and 9 on an annual basis. So we're really proud of that. You know, if you see the rest of the circle, you'll see that it's non-lithium. And so again, it's really important to understand where the usage is actually occurring. So how is lithium produced in the Salar de Atacama? We pump it out of beneath this hard crust, and it comes with a 0.2% concentration of lithium. And then over an 18 to 24-month period, we use the power of the sun. So when you look at its friendliness to the environment, this is the most environmentally friendly way to use the power of the sun to precipitate the impurities and to concentrate the brine. If we did an analysis, and our passive solar energy usage in the Salar accounts for 78% of our total energy use of all the 3 divisions of Albemarle globally. Once it's gone through this process, we have byproducts which we commercialize. Halite allows the copper industry to have a more efficient extraction process of the copper. And bischofite, for example, plays an important role in dust suppression for roads in the north, and that's instead of water usage. So we actually have a negative water footprint in Chile because of the water usage that's saved by the bischofite that's used for dust suppression. Once the brine hits a concentration of 6%, we truck it to La Negra, which is 3 hours away. It's on the coast. And there, this is where the magic happens, really, is that's where we make battery grade and technical grade lithium. So there's frequently confusion between whether brine is water and the brine in the Salar de Atacama is there because it has accumulated, the minerals have accumulated over time as the water ran down the sides of the mountains. You saw the diagram of the Salar that Beatriz showed. And so the brine in the Atacama, Salar de Atacama has 350 total dissolved solids. And so it's 10 times saltier than seawater. And so clearly brine should not be confused with a resource that can be used by communities for drinking water. So we always like to emphasize that it couldn't be used for any other thing. And of course, I won't talk much about the monitoring because Corrado went into it as well. I think I would like to talk about the water that's evaporated from the pools. We get questions about that. And yes, when you go back to this, the sun is essentially evaporating the water out, and that's one of the ways that the brine is concentrated. There is water evaporating all the time from the Salar de Atacama. That's how the brine got so concentrated. And we measure that, and SQM measures that as well. So we know what the natural evaporation rate is. We also know what the impact that we have on it. But the Helmholtz Institute did a study, and they determined that the water evaporated to produce a 64 kilowatt battery is the same amount of water that's needed to produce 250 grams of beef, 30 cups of coffee, or half a pair of jeans. And so I think that's important to keep in mind as well. So here you get a sense of, we're getting into the hydrogeology. We developed a new model of the Salar de Atacama in 2016. When you consider the Corfo model, we only just saw it last week, so I don't want to misspeak. But I understand that the consultant who did this work for Corfo did it based on our model. If any of the technical people have an issue with that, let me know, but that's my understanding. So we did an extensive study of the Salar, and really the Salar, we believe, is the most studied and monitored. Corrado talked about the monitoring points and how important they are to input that data into the model. We believe it is the single most studied and understood Salar in the world. In fact, we just updated our model again. We have to update it every 2 years based on what's going on in the monitoring. And we just did that in April. Okay, we carry out participatory environmental monitoring, and this is extremely important because in the end, the data is only as good as the faith that the stakeholders put into it. So this photo here on the right is actually an Albemarle employee. This photo was taken last week, and there are representatives in the environmental community present in that photo. They just didn't want to show up in the photo, so they're off to the side. But they go out with us and monitor with us. We deliver those reports on a monthly basis to the community so that they know exactly what's going on. We deliver to the Council of Indigenous Communities all of the environmental information that's generated by the company. And as part of our agreement, which I'll talk about, we provide environmental training for the communities. and work extremely closely with the Council of Indigenous Communities has an environmental unit, and we work extremely closely with them about environmental issues in the Salar. So we are just about to sign our environmental protocol with the Indigenous communities on exactly how we will continue to work together. And it also establishes an annual monitoring plan and new hydrogeological monitoring points. The communities will be building their own monitoring system, which will be financed by Albemarle. So let's talk about our agreement. We're extremely proud of our agreement. We signed a voluntary agreement with the Council of Indigenous Peoples in 2016. This represents the 18 communities around the Salar. And we also have an agreement with Basin, which is the closest community to us, as well as other agreements. What's really important about this agreement is that it follows the recommendations of the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People and the ILO Convention of 169. What's the basic, the main point of those documents? Really, one of the most important one is that number one, Indigenous communities should take part in the earnings from a project that's carried out on their lands. And number two, that they should have self-determination on what they do with those funds they're received. But that's not the focus of this agreement that we have. The focus is on working together to ensure the sustainability of the Salar. And so that's why we have this joint monitoring with the Indigenous communities. Our agreement calls for us to share 3.5% of our sales with the Indigenous communities. We have been doing so since 2016. And really, as a result of one of the things that the communities do with this money is to equip themselves with the expertise they need. So the Council of Indigenous Communities has an environmental unit. They have a couple of lawyers on their team. They have environmental consultants, and many of the communities have their own environmental consultants. So when we share the environmental data, when we sit down to talk about the sustainability of the Salar, we're sitting down with equals because their technical team understands exactly what the data is, and their technical team has spoken with the leadership so that they understand exactly what's going on. So we're really proud of that aspect of our agreement. Our agreement also calls for us to meet monthly on issues. And we are about to celebrate our 50th monthly meeting. And again, this is really the foundation of our relationship with the Indigenous communities, because it provides us with that opportunity to talk through the issues, to hear what we might not want to hear, and to see how we can work together to resolve where there's any issues. We just did an outside audit that was conducted by the University of Queensland Sustainable Mining Institute. And we just had a meeting with the Council of Indigenous Communities leaders on Friday. And the preeminent expert on Indigenous community agreements, who's at Griffiths University in Queensland, he studied 50 agreements in Australia and Canada, and he knows he's obviously now studied ours in Chile. And he said the difference that makes between an agreement, an okay agreement, an excellent agreement is the implementation. And I have an outstanding question for him, but I suspect that there's probably very few Indigenous community agreements of those 50 where the company has sat down every single month with the Indigenous community stakeholders. And so that's something that I'm going to do and find out if that's actually true. But we're quite proud of that. So what results do we have from the 5 iterations of financing that we've provided of 3.5% of our sales with the communities? It's incredibly diverse because, again, the communities select that. It's also very green. So Kama and Mertuka have constructed photovoltaic plants. Catarpe has solar panels on their homes. In general, communities have used the funding for better access to their water rights. Every single community has water rights. The rights are typically up in the highest part of the mountain. It's the cleanest, purest water, relatively low salt as compared to what we extract on the border of the Salar, which our water is industrial water, which we extract. And so they've used that money to put in piping and to have really better access and more efficient access to water. Community centers have been built. We're invited to a community center next in September, a new community center that's just been completed, and it's a beautiful center, which will be used hopefully for the next 100 years. There's a community center, there's a community that's repopulating. We believe it's the only example of that. The community of Huatín, most of the members live in the town, the city of Calama, but their vision is to move back to their town. You know, the first step is building houses, and their next step is how do they create a viable lifestyle that keeps them living in the community. And then of course, scholarships. We've also got a great agreement with San Pedro, which among other things, you know, more than 10,000 medical procedures. What I'm really proud of is that 3,000 students have benefited from Indigenous education programs, which includes studies of their language, culture, and traditions. And then finally, we've got an additional agreement with Peine. They've done some great things with that as well. Drinking water and wastewater treatment plants. They're looking at tourism. And then finally, of the 3.5%, the 0.5% goes to the Council of Indigenous Communities, which they use for R&D. It finances the environmental unit that I mentioned. It also funding for technical studies in Calama. But really last year, we were very pleased to be able to let the CPA know that they did not have to follow their plans that they had presented to us for the year, but rather they could use it for COVID. So 90% of these resources were used for COVID needs. And according to the CPA, they spent more money in the region on COVID than the government did. Again, that's coming from the CPA. I wouldn't be able to validate that figure. We're really pleased to announce that Mercedes announced last week in their investor call that we will be teaming up with Mercedes. And their statement was, we're going one step further to both preserve human rights and secure our future supply. For lithium, for example, we intend to team up with lithium producer Albemarle Corporation. Together, we are discussing reduction of CO2 emissions and lithium production, implementation of lithium recycling, and localization of battery-grade lithium production in Europe and the US. So we're really proud of that partnership. We believe it's a reflection on all the good work we've been doing globally. And we are extremely committed to being a global leader in responsible and sustainable lithium supply with Mercedes. And really, one of the ways that we're doing that is through IRMA, the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance. We were the first lithium company to do a self-assessment. We're moving quickly to doing our third-party audit. And the IRMA standard, if you're not familiar with it, is the single most demanding comprehensive standard because it was developed by NGOs, civil society, unions, mining companies, and end users of minerals. So we're really proud of that. As a company, we've charted our course in terms of zero carbon emissions. But we'll be looking to speed that up in lithium. As a company, we're looking to do net zero carbon emissions by 2050, but certainly looking at how we can be much faster about that. Here you can see our IRMA first. If you go to the IRMA mining map, first lithium mine to complete a self-assessment and first mine in Chile to complete a self-assessment. And we'll be moving forward to the audits, not only in the Salar, but also in Greenbushes. And finally, I think I'm over time, but I do want to mention the Responsible Lithium Partnership. This is a program that's being funded by Daimler, Volkswagen, BASF, and Fairphone. And essentially, it's a program that will pull together the stakeholders in the Salar to facilitate an understanding of the sustainability of the Salar, as well as to really identify where the issues are and develop an action plan so that we can ensure that lithium, tourism, the rest of the mining industry, agribusiness continue to coexist in a way that's sustainable. So just to close really quickly, you can count on Albemarle. You can count on our lithium from Chile. We're already working very closely with Daimler, and we'll continue along the EU's journey in terms of their Green Deal, their aspirations, in terms of providing enough lithium to support the electromobility and to ensure that we're producing sustainably in Chile. So I think I took a couple extra minutes, Denise. I apologize for that, but really appreciate the opportunity.
No problem. Thank you, Ellen, for these interesting insights. And you also stay with us for the discussion round now. And with this, Iris, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Thank you very much to all of our speakers. Okay, I can see you all now on the screen. Ellen just stopped sharing the screen. Perfect. We received some questions for our speakers, and I will just go through it how we received those questions. And I would like to start with Michael. So I think Michael is with us right now. I can't, yeah, here you are. I was just looking at the screen searching for you. Fernando Ruiz, he commented in the chat. Thank you very much, Michael, for your presentation. I have a question for you. Europe is increasing production of electric cars, but a large share of batteries will certainly continue to be imported from Southeast Asia. How is the share of imported batteries expected to evolve as the construction of battery factories in Europe progresses?
Well, of course, with the number of announcements that we've heard from Volkswagen, Daimler, BMW, etc., the quantities that we will be importing will decline, of course. To what extent, I can't tell you. It'll also depend on where in the supply chain you want to put the nail, because if we import all like all the cathode or precursor materials into Europe and then produce cells versus directly importing cells out of Asia. So this is the question where we will be starting in the value chain in Europe. If we produce cathode materials in Europe from imported raw materials, such as lithium from Chile, or cobalt and nickel out of Scandinavia, and then we'll produce the cathode and then the final cells in Europe, I think the numbers out of Southeast Asia will decline, most certainly. And that is one of the main intentions, I suppose, from the European OEMs to be less import dependent on China or Japan, if you will.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I have a question also for Jorge. Jorge Enrique Celedon, he asked why Bolivia is not considered in the supply forecast 2030. In case the situation changes, how relevant would they be?
Well, indeed, we are not considering Bolivian production in our forecast. This is because the information about the production and timing is not enough now to be included. We know there was a project in 2017 with an estimated data of opening for 2022. So that project was must be producing now, but and the production estimated were around 40,000 tons of equivalent lithium in hydroxide. But now this project is suspended, and we don't have information about if it will be restarted soon. So it's because so the potential of Bolivia is high, but with the current project, probably the production, if the project restart soon, probably at the end of this decade, the medium second half of this decade, the production of Bolivia could reach 40 kilotons. So it's important, but it won't change the balance that we are forecasting. That is the situation for Bolivia in our vision.
Thank you very much. Just a short remark on my behalf. If you want to comment on the questions, I actually direct to one person. You can just switch on your microphone, the speakers, and comment also between each other. So I will direct the questions, but you're very, very welcome to just jump into the discussion and give your comments. So please feel free to comment on the question I'm directing to another person. Yes, Michael.
Yes, I'd like to comment on Bolivia as well. He was absolutely right. There's so many uncertainties surrounding this country in terms of government, investment security. I mean, the project was stalled in 2019, and there's so many uncertain things surrounding that country, which in my personal opinion is very sad, because I think that the potential as a producer, as a large producer, is very high. But I totally agree. Probably towards the end of this decade, quite possibly, maybe the Chinese have enough money to spend there and are willing to do so. But I think there is most certainly the potential, but a lot of investment risk.
Thank you, Michael. And I want to do a short question for Beatriz. Beatriz, because I'm sure that other people also have this question in mind. The model you presented, the results of the model, could you just refer quickly? Will they be available somewhere? Is there free access to those results?
The model will be finished, or will be finished in soon, 2 or 3 weeks, and will be uploaded in the website of Corfo.
Okay,
for everybody.
So we can expect, like, in 2 or 3 weeks, there will be a download on the Corfo website.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And just stay with me. We also have a question, a technical question for you on behalf of Luis Felipe. The question is, are the results Corfo integrated model in line with SQM's model predicted brine levels?
We have not reviewed the last version of the SQM models in detail. So, but we can see if the water levels will be the same or similar. But with the information we have, we can think the model will predict similar drawdowns or similar water levels. I think because the data which will construct the model is the same. I think will be similar, but we are not compare exactly the results of both Corfo and SQM model at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And just another question, because we saw that SQM has a very developed monitoring system. Ellen just told us about Albemarle also managing very well and informing, etc. But we know that there are not only lithium producers working and operating in the Salar de Atacama. We also saw that there are at least, I think, 2 copper mines being at the same basin. So do they also have monitoring systems? Are they accounted to the whole system? Can you just share your insight?
We used for the model, for the Corfo model, all the information, public information coming from brine company who produce lithium, and companies who produce copper in the basin. For example, Compañía Minera Saldívar and Escondida. And we used all the information, all public information that that company put on the environmental public system. And yes, we include all the information in our model.
Okay, thank you very much. Because when we are talking about energy transition, electromobility, etc., clearly this is a lithium webinar, but we also have to consider that Chile is a copper producer together with lithium. The two resources are very, very important for the German and European industry. So I think it's very important that we have an integrated look at all stakeholder participants, operating companies at this ecosystem.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I have two questions actually for Corrado, also on behalf of Luis Felipe. Corrado, does the environmental monitoring system include the measurement of evaporated water at the ponds?
Okay, thank you, Iris. No, at the moment, that information is not included in the monitoring network, but as a matter of fact, we measure that because it's a part of the process. As Ellen explained, we have similar processes, actually pretty much the same. So we collect the brine. So we needed information in order to feed the ponds with the new brine. So exists, but is not included in that because it's part of the internal process and not part of an environmental network. And also, it's important to mention that all that water is going out from the ponds is actually following the same natural path, as Alan explained, that the evaporation is part of the process of formation of the Salar. So in other words, we are changing, we shifted from a natural evaporation process taking place only in the marginal zone to say, two kinds of evaporation, one natural in the marginal zone and another one in the ponds. So we are basically reproducing in a different way the same process of evaporating the water in excess in the basin.
Thank you very much. And there is a second question. Are the discarded salts included in the environmental monitoring system?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of the question. What?
Are the discarded salts included in the environmental monitoring system?
No, they are not. We measure that, if you mean by that, the salt, the precipitation that we don't use in the process. There is a residual salts from the process, but it's not part of the monitoring network because it's a byproduct of all the process. It's measured because we have to report to the authority how much salt do we have, how much lithium is in all the discarded salts, but is not part of the monitoring network.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we just got another question for you on behalf of Jan Kosmer from the German Environmental Agency. Does SQM also plan to demonstrate responsible mining by engaging with IRMA, as Albemarle does?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes. I'm not the person in charge of that. There is Stefan De Bruin in the audience here, but we are pending members, I understand, since April in the IRMA project, so certification. So definitely, yes, we are engaged in that direction. It's not the only one initiative in that sense. And I don't know if you want, Stefan, add something useful here, because you are the expert. I'm just informed of the process.
Thanks, Corrado, and hello, everybody. Yes, so we will start our formal third-party external audit in the next months. And at this point, we will become also a partner in this multi-stakeholder initiative called IRMA. And this is really, for us, a very important way forward to work together with all the stakeholders and everybody in the value chain. We're also the first lithium producer to join the Global Battery Alliance, which is a spun out from the World Economic Forum at the beginning of 2020. So this is very important, and we are working very hard towards that.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for joining in. Nice to see you
Thank
on the screen. Now I have a question or a comment which I could give over to SQM and to Albemarle, to Ellen as well. We have here a comment: thanks for all the given presentations and providing the great platform. You're very welcome. As we learned, the lithium suppliers are highly focused on environmental processes and sustainability. Is there still potential for improvement, or are the suppliers on an excellent path? Maybe first Ellen, and then maybe we could change back to SQM.
Sure. Well, thanks for that question. And the answer is yes, yes, yes. There's always room for improvement. You know, I think what's really exciting about sustainability is that the younger generations are really inspired by it. And so there are going to be innovations that will be developed that we can't even dream of yet. And so that's the beauty of focusing on sustainability. We are unleashing so much creativity and innovation. And so, yes, there's more we can do. To be more specific, we are looking at how we can even reduce our water footprint even further in the Salar. We will be utilizing green energy in the near future as well. So those are two very concrete things. And again, the social aspect of it is so important. And so we will continue, just as we went through an audit process with the University of Queensland Sustainable Mineral Institute. We have a list of action items that we have to work on with the communities in terms of improving our agreement. And so we'll be doing that. And then IRMA, I would like to talk a little bit about IRMA. It has more than 800 criteria by which we will be measured and have measured ourselves. It ranges from environmental impact, social impact, relationship with employees, financial contributions to the country. There we will. It's like having. We have a consulting company already in our site, not literally, but our team has been working on this to see where we need to make improvements. And so there are things, actions that we're going to have to take. Just to give you an example, you know, of course, the world watched what happened in Western Australia when Rio Tinto blew up the indigenous community caves. So we clearly understand what the patrimony is in our mine site. But IRMA requires you to understand what the patrimony is, cultural patrimony is around the area. So that's a study that we're going to have to do in order to reach higher levels of IRMA. And so, and that's just one example. There are so many areas where we need to make improvements. And again, that doesn't mean we're not operating a sustainable way. What we're doing is we're going for high performance sustainability, and it's being driven by IRMA. And it's being driven by the NGOs and the stakeholders who said, we know we need mining, we want it done in a different way. And so this is going to be a several year process for us to make these improvements. But in the end, we'll be a better operator. We'll be a much better operator. We're starting from a really good place, but we recognize we always have to get better.
Thank you, Ellen. Back to SQM. Can you just comment briefly on that statement or on the question?
Well, there are different people here from SQM, but from my side, I would say that we are at the beginning of this new process, and we are, say, very well prepared to face that and very excited to start that path, because we think we have a very good understanding of the Salar, of his behavior, and so we have a very solid starting point to perform a very sustainable exploitation of the Salar de Atacama. We are aware of all the kind of critics and concerns about the Salar de Atacama, but we know that we are in the best position to provide solid and sustainable solution for the exploitation of the Salar de Atacama. And this is only from my side, from hydrological point of view. I understand that is one of the most important, but we are really prepared for that and excited to do that. And there are also other initiatives in order to improve efficiency in the Salar. And that's part of our agreement with Corfon as well. And we also know that there are other, say, processes that are in the very initial stage, like direct lithium extraction. We hear about that all the time. But the fact is that there is no very solid and sound project, already running on that at this kind of scale. So there are lots of pilot studies, and we are looking carefully to all of these initiatives to see which kind of that is applicable and suitable for the Salar de Atacama. So we see the future as a mix of the, say, old-fashioned way to produce lithium, that is by evaporation, that, by the way, is absolutely efficient because you use the energy from the sun, and it's a very friendly with the environment because no other, say, input to the Salar. That's an important dimension as well. And so we are open and very interesting to see which kind of DLE is actually working to the Salar with benefits and not to add any additional risks to the Salar. Talking about different and external material to the Salar, chemicals and the kind of stuff. So it sounds fine, it's good, but must demonstrate it is applicable to this kind of scale, and it's a real competitive in terms of protection of the environment as well. We are looking at that also. I don't know if it's Stefan or someone else could add something about sustainability. We have something to say, Stefan or Andres?
No, I think you already mentioned everything.
Okay, sorry for that. It's not my fault you put me here, colleague.
We just got another question from Fernando. I will just leave you the question, and then maybe the speakers can choose who wants to answer it and go further with that comment. What about the further processing of lithium in Chile? Is there concrete progress in this regard? Which role can play the technological exchange with Germany and Europe?
I can start with that. So there's a number of ways to look at this question. And number one is efficiency. And so in terms of extracting as much lithium as possible from the brine that we extract. And we are embarking upon a project to further process our byproduct salts to extract additional lithium. So we're making really good headway on that. And already have an extremely efficient process, but always looking to see how we can improve that. In terms of further processing of lithium, again, we make technical grade and battery grade lithium. So we are adding a great deal of value in Chile. Our battery grade is used directly into the cathode process. But certainly there are next generation opportunities, and one of which is lithium metal. And so we do a lot of research and we produce lithium metal. That could be an area definitely where we could consider a technological exchange. We produce lithium metal in Germany and have been doing so. Lithium metal will be used in future generation batteries. There's an element of localization that needs to be considered because it isn't necessarily, it's very, very, very thin foil, lithium foil. And so transportation of it isn't necessarily, it's an issue. And so I see Michael wants to add something. And so in terms of localizing that in Chile for now, I think we'd have to wait until we're looking at when the automotive manufacturers who are manufacturing in Brazil and Argentina are really needing that type of product. And so it'll come in the future, perhaps in Chile, we hope it will. But for now, our focus is in the US and in Europe.
Thank you, Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick thought on that. It was said about a localization of a downstream industry in Chile, but there's an opportunity for quite the opposite, if you will, in Europe. As I mentioned, we will be adding a lot of cell manufacturing capacity in Europe. And just around where my parents live, on a coincidence, it's a chemical park, and AMG Lithium GmbH just announced that they will be building a downstream facility in Europe and Germany. And there's 2 or 3 other companies that are considering that thought. And the basic idea behind that is to import some sort of lithium carbonate, if you will, technical grade or battery grade already, and further refine that in Germany or Europe at the center where the cathode manufacturers or cell manufacturers or even the OEMs will need the product. And that would enable Europe, or specifically Germany, to have what's called a circular economy, because then you can use production scrap, recycle it on site, feed it through the converters, go back to the cell manufacturers. And it would give Chile or other companies or other countries the opportunity to produce what they produce, what they're best at, what they're really good at for the past 20, 30, 40 years, have a business model there, export this material to Europe, to Germany, with it, maybe even with a spin-off company, be at the center of where the material is going to be needed. You have shorter transportation routes. You don't have to worry about ships getting caught up in some sort of canal, or you don't get any containers. So that would help, I believe, or we believe, all of the industries that are connected with that, just to get things going. So maybe this could be, I know it's the opposite thought of being localized in Chile, but you'd be at the heart of the industry that really needs those products.
And that's exactly what we're doing, Michael. Yeah. If you look at our agreement with Mercedes, that's
exactly. I was actually thrilled to read it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the lithium carbonate can be used directly into the cathodes, and then conversion from carbonate to hydroxide for batteries that will be that require lithium hydroxide, and so that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, good. That's really good.
I just want to add an additional comment on that. So we often hear this complaint or concern from stakeholders that not enough value is added in Chile. I have been selling lithium carbonate and lithium hydroxide since 2005 in Asia, before I became in charge of stakeholder relations. And I can tell you the quality demands that are required by the cathode manufacturers in Asia are really very high. And so we are producing lithium carbonate, technical grade, battery grade, to those high standards in Chile. And we are also the only producer of lithium hydroxide in Chile. Obviously, in Europe now there is a lot of concern following also the Corona pandemic about resilience of supply chains, and that is of course something very interesting to look into. I like a lot your idea, Michael, about the connecting to the recycling. And from SQM side, we are already since several years working in a couple of recycling research projects in Germany together with the company Accurec. So yeah, we are also actively looking into that. And of course, future will tell what will happen.
Thank you very much for your comment, Stefan. And I just want to shortly step in because I want to comment myself on that, because the last part of the question is which role can play the technological exchange with Germany/Europe? Well, I think it's a very, very important role that we have also as a chamber. We're working between Germany and Chile, and we are helping that the technological exchange, that the commercial exchange can be used for the benefits of both sides of the Atlantic. So that's actually also why we are going to implement this Chilean-German lithium working group. We want companies and stakeholders go together, have an exchange, look how they can work together, and then cooperatively benefit being in Germany or being in Chile. So I think the technological exchange is very, very important. The sharing of information, the transparency of information, and also investigation for the whole inside the whole value chain. So thank you very much for this very great question. And we are almost coming to the end of the webinar, and there's one last question I would not like to leave alone. So there's another question from Luis Philippe, and we're jumping back to the hydrogeological model. The numerical models SQM, Corfu, and Alumale includes the brine recirculation into the Salar. Can you just comment on that briefly? The recirculation, the brine recirculation.
Yeah, right. The Corfu model includes the recirculation in the net extraction of SQM are included the recirculation. So it's included in the Corfu model as a net extraction, right? But we realize that we need study with more focusing in the recirculation concept in the Salar. But until now we include it in our model.
Thank you very much, Beatriz. So there were no more questions coming in, and I would just like to thank you very, very much for the open discussion round, for your comments, for answering the question of the audience. And for me, there's nothing else left to say. So I would just get back to Denise. Denise, yes, as the moderator of this great event, you have the last words, I think.
Thank you, Iris, and thanks to our panelists, participants, and everyone who joined us today. Thanks for your questions as well. I think we had a really interesting discussion, really informative presentations. And please feel free to get in touch with us if you have further questions or comments. And we're looking forward to see some of you again in our upcoming sessions of the German-Chilean Lithium Working Group. And yes, I think that's it. So have a nice day and see you soon.
Thank you for allowing us to participate. It was a great program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Thank you for the invitation.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.